Joe Rogan is done pretending, and you know what? Maybe the rest of us are too, because I don't think there's been a more relatable segment than this next clip regarding just how far the social pendulum has swung left, leaving the rest of the liberals confused, alienated, and alone. There's one thing that perhaps makes this clip such a classic, which is seeing Joe finally lift the garb of nicety and lay bare every place that the modern left is going terribly wrong. Just take a look at this.
Over time, this is what we're seeing. So over time, you and I, who used to be on the left, are now like, where's the left? Where are you guys? You guys are so far away. I can't even see you. You're out of your mind. You're f***ing chopping off and giving little kids hormone blockers. You have no idea what the long-term consequences are. You're ignoring the health risks. You won't even talk about the health risks. You use things like gender-affirming care. What are you saying? What are you saying when you're talking about children? Why are you just accepting this? Because it's a noble thing to blurt out, so everybody goes, you're on the right team. That's what it is.
Joe just invited the wrath of about a dozen different groups there, but isn't there a cold truth to that? I mean, Joe Rogan himself would know, because the more firmly he stands his ground on the political left of center, the greater the pull he feels from a political spectrum that's going way off into that side. That's what you see every time you get in a spat with a network like CNN, or comes under fire as a transphobe from a bevy of trans activists and media organizations over his very legitimate questions about children or sports. Remember when Joe Rogan accused CNN of manipulating the color grading on his skin tone to make him appear more sick during the pandemic? I think that entire saga, as well as many of the ways the left has gone too far on social and gender issues, made one thing clear to him: he could either dig his heels on the center left while the Overton window moves further and further, or he could just go along to get along in a never-ending spiral to the left. He chose the former and paid the price for it.
California went nuts, man. It's gone like full communist. It's out of its mind. And their approach to law enforcement is so insane. It's so insane. The no cash bail, the letting people out for committing violent crimes, the not stopping people for stealing up to whatever money it is. What is it, $900 now? I think they raised it. I think they made it a little higher. San Francisco is non-existent. Most of San Francisco is emptied out of like big chain stores and big department stores.
I wouldn't even do stand-up there anymore.
It's crazy.
They ruined it.
They ruined the city.
California, under Gavin Newsom, models what a truly liberal state would look like. And despite the many political or social disagreements that you might have, perhaps that's a good thing. Every state in the country is an experiment in itself of the policies that its people want. But if you want to feel the pulse of public sentiment, you need to watch what people do and say. It's manifested in the fact that 800,000 people have left the state in 2021, with a net loss of 350,000 people, according to the US Census Bureau. The state is a melting pot of liberal policies that stretch not just into the social sphere, but also in the everyday financial lives of citizens. And to prevent the control and volatility that comes with fiat money, diversification into precious metals with the help of companies like Birch Gold could be a lifesaver. Click the link in the description or text the word FFIRA to 989898 if you'd like to learn more. The stats of California is a large experiment in liberal policies from a cashless bail system, so it doesn't discriminate against suspects of lower financial means, to things like mandatory ethics studies, courses in schools starting next year that do more to dwell on people's surface differences than to teach children of true equality and diversity.
They're not attacking you for a reasonable, it's not logical, like the way they're attacking you. They're attacking like someone attacks religious beliefs. And some of these religious beliefs, it gets into these weird gray areas, like trans people in women's bathrooms. Like, says who? Says who? How do you know that's a real trans person? How do you not know that's a creep that wants to pull his out in front of kids, because those are real.
We spa.
Yeah, and if that guy was a convicted sex offender. Yeah. And he was doing that. Look, those guys are real. It doesn't mean trans people aren't real also, but those guys are real. Yeah. And to even say that those guys are real, you get excommunicated. You get treated like you're a Nazi.
I think we can hypothesize why that is. There has historically been a problem with the left as generally an end of the political spectrum. It's that it's very hard to say where it goes extreme because the core ideas driving it seem very agreeable and rational to people, unlike extremes on the right that can take the shape of racial superiority or strict social hierarchies. How do you take an idea like compassion to the extreme? How do you see something wrong with an idea like equality? It's not very apparent to most people unless they do a great amount of thinking and introspection. It's something that people like Jordan Peterson have repeatedly pointed out. Sociologists often talk about what's called the Overton window, which is basically a window of acceptable political discourse that lies somewhere between the left and the right, leaving the extremes of both on the fringes outside. The problem with the right is that you quickly hit a wall when you go too far, because far-right extremism quickly becomes painfully clear. But the further you move on the left, you encounter a sliding slope, where it's hard to see what's wrong with taking just one more step in that direction. Over time, society realizes that the Overton window has shifted way too far to the left, bit by bit, with those that are even center-left or center-right starting to feel right-wing from a relative perspective. I remember it was a question put to Jordan Peterson as well, because the failure to clearly demarcate a line on where the left goes too far in this country on a variety of issues has resulted in the envelope being pushed further and further. And what's really scary is that even the greatest torchbearers of leftist politics and social issues have no real border drawn on where the ideology they stand for has gone too far.
If we can agree, and we haven't, that the left can go too far, which it clearly can, then how would my worthy opponents precisely define when the left that they stand for has gone too far? You didn't like equity, equality of outcome. I think that's a great marker. But if you have a better suggestion and won't sidestep the question, so let's figure out how I can dispense with my white privilege, and so that you can tell me when the left has gone too far, since they clearly can. And that's what this debate is about political correctness. It's about the left going too far. And I think it's gone too far in many ways, and I'd like to figure out exactly how and when, so the reasonable left could make its ascendance again and we could quit all this nonsense.
It's unfortunate, but that's exactly what we are witnessing in our society today. Someone like Joe Rogan, who just a few years ago was a very popular figure on both sides of the political aisle, has suddenly started to be lumped in together with figures much further right than him. That's exactly what we saw when California Governor Gavin Newsom expressed worry at the fact that his son was listening to micro-cults like Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, and Jordan Peterson, as if they can all be lumped together like this. But the fact is, it's not Joe that has moved to the right, it's the ground from underneath him that has moved further to the left. The only antidote to this is holding your ground and refusing to go along with the crowd. We are living in a time when there's no one to steer us in the right direction and no lever on where the crowd goes. That means every single one of us does need to take stock of our own beliefs instead of simply confirming. Seeing Joe Rogan as one of the largest names in alternative media and mainstream media to be able to do that should give the rest of us courage to do the same.